Welcome to How to Quilt a Semi-Custom Quilting Plan on your Longarm machine. I am so excited to show you how to successfully navigate a slightly more custom and slightly more complicated quilting plan. My name is HollyAnne, Knight of String and Story, and it's my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. Now, anytime we're working with a semi-custom quilting plan, that means we're working with 2 or 3 quilting motifs. And I really like these plans because they're a little bit more texture, a little bit more visual interest, a little bit more kind of fun to quilt, if you ask me, than just doing an all-over design, but they aren't quite as complicated as something that has 4 or 5 or more motifs thrown at it. What we're going to do here on this Star Island panel from the Quilting Rockstar panel collection is we're going to talk about how to navigate multiple motifs without breaking thread, and even how to move from one block to the other. All right? Now think when we're working on a Longarm, you're generally working in rows going back and forth unless you're doing something very custom. This happens to be a very large block, so unless you have a deep throat on your Longarm machine, you're probably going to have to roll back and forth a little bit to make your way around this block, but the navigation of the block itself and from block to block is fairly straightforward. Now, on our Longarm, let's assume that we're starting in the top left-hand corner. We're doing 3 motifs today. We're going to have switchbacks, a loopy meander that I have just done all the loops in a row so they look like a little telephone cord, and then a meander. These are very introduction, free motion quilting friendly motifs, all right? In fact, these are 3 of the 4 motifs that I teach in my mini course, Intro to Free Motion Quilting. So if you're brand new, looking for how to get started, that course should be your next stop. But for now, let's talk about how to navigate this. You'll see that in the outer section of this block, I have done all switchbacks. And then I move into that telephone cord loopy meander, and then into the regular meander. I literally have worked this in a spiral, and then I can use the ditches. It's a panel, so imaginary ditches to navigate over to the next block, all right? So let's imagine that I started working in this top corner and I've worked my way all the way in. I would probably add a little bit of stitch in the ditch around this star. And by that point, I'm probably right about here. I would navigate in this ditch between the blue and pink triangles all the way up to the top where my batting is, and then jump right over to begin again. We're going to do our switchbacks going around. And in this case, I'm just simply going to run my switchback all the way to the end and then change directions. My temptation is to turn my iPad, but I'm going to try to resist that temptation so that we can picture how we would literally be moving our Longarm quilting machine along the way. All right. Now, my recommendation for you on this is if you do have to roll your Longarm, then on these switchbacks, maybe wait till you're at like this point, this halfway point, if that's a depth that your machine can accommodate, and then roll forward so that if you get a little skip stitch or 2, it'll get kind of lost in the edge, all right? All the way around. And then you can see we're here at this edge. I would literally retrace myself and then down this stitch to the corner in order to begin adding these telephone cord loops. I'm going to do 5 loops in the big triangles and 3 loops in the small triangles. You can do as many or as few loops as you like. I just really like the way that they stack up with each other. And I think alternating the number of loops just adds one more little touch. And from here, you'll notice I'm right in the corner and ready to add my meander. Now I'm picking up my pencil at a lot of these corners, but when I'm quilting, I literally would just go right across where there would be a little ditch of those seams meeting if this were pieced, and just kind of hop across that right there for a nice tidy transition into the next portion. And then here is where I would recommend then going around and stitching in the ditch all the way around your star to really help it stand out. And depending on your batting and how it is rated, you may even want to consider stitching these center sections here. All right, from here, notice we're back at this point, and in order to get down to any of these bottom blocks, I would navigate in this stitch to the center section, come back down, repeat the whole process again. So now that we know how we're going to navigate around with this semi-custom quilting plan on our long arm, let's go do it. All right, let's review this semi-custom quilting plan that we're going to do together. We're working with 3 motifs: switchbacks, loopy meander that we've arranged like a little telephone cord loop, and then the meander. I'm going to work each block in circles, and at about the halfway point of each block, I'm going to have to advance my long arm in order to get the lower portion, and then I'll have to advance back up as I continue to move around. Once we've gone around all 3 kind of loops, if you will, that we're doing with this meander, we will then use our ditch to travel up to the batting and across, and we could move into the next block. This is essentially the essence of working with a semi-custom quilting plan, whether you're doing it on a long arm like we are right now or on a domestic machine. Deciding your motifs, deciding where those motifs go, and then deciding how you're going to move from one to another. If you're working with multiple thread colors, of course, you can just break thread and move around your quilt at will. But if you're using just one thread color and want to minimize your thread breaks like we're doing today, taking a little bit of time to think through your path will make this next step of execution a lot easier. All right, let me show you. First up, I'm just going to do switchbacks all the way around. And I actually want to remember that this top and side portion of this block are the edges of my quilt, which means my binding is going to come along here. So I actually want to stop my switchbacks a little bit short of the top so I don't totally lose them when I trim up later. I can feel the bar of my machine, so it's time to go forward. Now, rolling a quilt back and forth like this is a very normal part of long arming. You'll notice that I have basted across the top edge when we were getting started, and that's just to help hold everything square as I'm moving back and forth. And then each time I advance or regress the quilt, I want to make sure that I take a moment to smooth it all out again. Then as you hit start, just keep in mind that your long arm may want to jump a little bit because you just moved the quilt. So make sure you hold it nice and steady. Now, as a general rule, I try to use the edge of my free motion quilting foot to make my switchbacks as even as possible. If you have a little area where they're not so even though, don't worry. The human eye loves to autocorrect. And once you step back from this and look at the quilt as a whole, they will look very even. Time to advance the quilt again. Our next motif is the loopy meander. So I'm going to stitch in the ditch down the side of this triangle and then begin to work my way around inside all of the blue triangles. Remember, we're going to do 5 loops in the large triangles and 3 loops in the smaller ones. Our last motif is the basic meander, so we're going to go around one more time. I know I'm getting close to my edge, so let's go ahead and roll this up. As you can see, freehand diagonals are really challenging, so give yourself a little bit of grace, maybe use some matching thread, or if you have one, grab a ruler. And there you have it, 3 simple motifs, some stitch in the ditch, and you're ready to travel in the ditch over to the batting and work on your next block. This quilt will be done in no time. Don't forget to head over to my blog for more tips and tricks about semi-custom quilting plans.